Hey everyone, let's get to the heart of understanding white nationalism. Both sides agree 100% on the facts. White people are on track to become minorities in many countries where they are currently the majority. Look, I'll prove it. Here's a bunch of mainstream media articles discussing in detail white demographic decline. This one even says whites will be a minority in the USA in 2045. Now, when a person of European descent says, hey, white majorities are declining in their homelands, they're labeled everything from conspiracy theorists to white nationalists. Why? Here's the difference. When the New York Times says it, like this article, we can replace them. They act like it's a good thing. They're cheering the decline on. Now, on the flip side, those who show concern about this issue are publicly and professionally destroyed. If a white person speaks of this phenomenon, it's a bad thing, period. It's hard to logically argue that seeing a people's decline is a positive. I mean, what nation on earth wants to see their people die off? If Japanese people or Chinese people want to maintain a majority in their own countries, would we call them yellow nationalists? Hell no. It sounds nasty and offensive. Speaking of which, I don't want to be called white anymore. Call me a European Canadian. I think that sounds less offensive. The political landscape right now dictates that if you are a so-called white person and you are not overjoyed with seeing your people turned into a hated minority in the future, you are a white nationalist. You can be labeled and big tech can deplatform you with impunity. Here's another weird thing. If you talk about these demographic truths, you're also called a conspiracy theorist. But we know that this is happening, so there is no conspiracy. So that's your choice if you're of European descent. Shut up or be called a racist and a bigot. So now that we've established that any white person sticking up for their country and people is a white nationalist, even though this is second nature to everyone else on planet Earth, I find it bizarre that the government is not concerned about white birth rates, which have hit historic lows in the West. Look at the US. White people are dying out in more states than they are procreating in. Canada's birth rates aren't even at replacement level, which is 2.1 children per family. They haven't been since 1971. Several European nations have acknowledged their low birth rates and have instituted pro-family policies, including Hungary and Italy. These are governments that care about their citizens, unlike the American government, which instead held a Senate hearing on the evils of white nationalism. Talking about declining white birth rates doesn't make you a white nationalist. In fact, not talking about it, shaming people into not talking about it, and gleefully cheering it on would make you a racist. You're not concerned about the plight of a particular race of people that seems to be struggling. You're not concerned about the implications this will bring to our societies, our countries. If we weren't living in clown world, this would be studied, investigated, and resolutions sought. The founding stock of the country is dying out, and this isn't a big deal to the government. They have every other useless bureau. Why not one for this? Why don't politicians care about their voters? Why do they seem to prioritize the wants of foreigners? It's so messed up. Replacing entire countries with immigrants who have no connection to the nation's history, ancestry, culture, religion of the nation is not a viable solution. Long term, this will only lead to turmoil and strife. Let's look at Japan again. Birth rates are low, but they're not bringing in massive hordes of foreigners to bump up their numbers. That's because they want to preserve their culture, ancestry, and history. They want to remain Japanese, not some weird hybrid country with no identifiable culture. They don't want to erase their people. This is normal and healthy. What is going on in the Western world right now is not. It is very sick. Okay, so imagine if this was any other race of people, not European descendants. Imagine, for example, Tibetans were becoming a dwindling minority in their homeland. The UN would send in the troops, Hollywood would stage relief concerts, and human rights NGOs would be out in full force claiming that Tibetans should be able to determine their own future. Oh yeah, they've already done that with Tibet. And speaking of Tibet, the Dalai Lama, the spiritual leader of the Tibetan people, was labeled a white supremacist for saying Europe belongs to the Europeans and refugees should return home and rebuild their countries. Honk honk. Concerned citizens certainly wouldn't be labeled racist and deplatformed from social media like whites are for having legitimate concerns about demographic replacement. And if we're all Canadians, like multiculturalism wants us to believe, then why aren't all Canadians worried about declining white birth rates. I'm seeing a lot of gleefulness and gloating from non-whites about white demographic decline, almost a revenge sort of attitude, which is really twisted. All right, so what do you think about this whole white nationalism issue? Let me know in the comments section below, and thank you so much for liking and subscribing. Have yourself a great day.